The war had been long and brutal. For years, humanity had fought alongside the Varani, a mighty alien empire. Against the terrifying Tyrell swarm, the swarm was unstoppable, a massive force that had taken over countless planets. It was only with the help of humans, with their resourcefulness and determination, that the tide of battle began to turn in the favor of the Varani, but no one expected what happened next. As the war came to a close, the Varani Council, the leaders of the Empire, made a decision that would change everything. During peace talks, just as the alliance was about to be solidified, the Varani turned their weapons on humanity. Ships that had once fought side by side now opened fire on each other. Earth's fleets were ambushed and their colonies scattered across the stars, were attacked without mercy. It was a massacre. The betrayal was broadcast across the galaxy for all to see. The humans, once strong allies, were now treated as enemies. They had been left vulnerable, abandoned, and slaughtered. The news spread like wildfire, and yet no one came to their aid. The galaxy, for the most part, stood silent. On Earth, the loss was devastating. Millions of humans died, not just in battle, but in the destruction of their homes and colonies. Cities were wiped out in an instant. Some managed to escape, but many perished in the attack. The Varani had shown no mercy. They were confident, believing humanity would be easy to crush, but they had underestimated humans. For years, humanity mourned the loss. They rebuilt what they could, but they did so quietly. There were no grand announcements, no attempts at revenge. The galaxy believed that humanity had been defeated, that they had no future. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity was planning something far more dangerous, in secret. Human scientists and engineers worked on building a fleet, not a fleet of great numbers, but one of incredible power. It wasn't meant to be fast or flashy. It was meant to be deadly. Humans didn't need an army of ships to take revenge. They just needed a few. It's just enough to make the galaxy remember who. They were in the shadows of a distant star system. Human engineers constructed the first of the new fleet. It was a ship unlike any other, built from scraps. It's from old technology. And yet it was stronger than any warship that had ever existed. Its engines were powered by stolen alien tech, its weapons more advanced than anything the Varani had ever seen. But it wasn't just the ships that made this new force so dangerous. It was the human will behind it. For humans, revenge wasn't just about destroying enemies. It was about survival. It was about making sure that no one would ever again think they could be ignored or betrayed. The fleet wasn't ready to make itself known just yet. The humans still needed time. They had to stay hidden, keep a low profile. But Captain Alina Drake, the leader of the human fleet, was preparing. She was the one who would lead them into battle when the time came. She was the one who would make the Varani and the galaxy remember that humanity was not weak. They were survivors. Captain Drake stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at the stars. She could almost feel the weight of every life lost. During that brutal betrayal, the memories were still fresh. The anger still burned deep in her heart. But there was no room for anger now. There was only the mission. It was only the plan. They would take back what had been taken from them. Planet by planet, humanity wasn't done. It wasn't finished. The galaxy had made a mistake, thinking that the betrayal would crush them. But that mistake would soon be corrected. Humanity would rise again, and the galaxy would feel their wrath. The fleet was small, just a few ships, but it was powerful. Each ship was designed for a specific purpose, each one equipped with advanced weapons and technology that the Varani had never seen before. The humans had learned from the mistakes of the past. They wouldn't make the same mistakes again. This time, they would be the ones in control. As Captain Drake stood there, she gave a silent nod to the officers around her. It was time. First mission was ready. They would strike quickly, and they would strike hard. The Varani might think they had defeated humanity, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The first target was a small Varani colony on the outer rim of their empire. It wasn't important to the Varani, but to humanity, it was the perfect starting point. A small world with a small population. The Varani wouldn't expect it. They wouldn't be prepared. Drake's plan was simple. It would strike fast, disable the colony's defenses, and then make their move. The humans wouldn't destroy the planet. That wasn't the goal. They didn't need to wipe out entire worlds. They just needed to send a message that would echo through the galaxy. As the human ships jumped into hyperspace, Captain Drake felt a calm determination. This was their chance. This was the moment when the galaxy would realize that humanity was no longer the weak species they once thought. Humanity had been betrayed, but now they were taking back what was theirs. And the first step was just beginning. The darkness of space stretched out before the human fleet as it entered the vast emptiness of the Varani sector. Captain Alina Drake stood at the helm of the flagship, the Vanguard. Her sharp eyes focused on the star charts that flickered on the screen. The fleet had been in hyperspace for what felt like days, but their destination was near. The small Varani colony, a world known as Elisar, lay ahead. It was a modest planet, far from the heart of the Varani Empire, but to humanity, it was the perfect target. The Varani had always believed that humans were no threat. They thought their betrayal had wiped out any remaining hope of human resistance. But as the human fleet approached Elisar, they were about to learn that the humans were not just survivors. They were now a force to be reckoned with. Alina had made sure that every member of the crew was ready. The Vanguard was not just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's return to power. The fleet was small, only 5 ships in total, but each one was equipped with the latest technology. They were built for precision, not overwhelming force. The goal wasn't to destroy, it was to send a message. To make the galaxy remember what humanity was capable of, prepare to drop out of hyperspace. Alina ordered, her voice calm and steady. The crew responded quickly, their movements precise. It had taken years to prepare for this moment, and now the time had come. Vanguard and the other 4 ships dropped out of hyperspace, emerging just outside the atmosphere of Elisar. The planet looked peaceful, almost serene, floating in the depths of space like a pale blue marble. But it was the perfect place to make a statement. Alina didn't hesitate. She gave the signal to engage. The first wave of human fighters was deployed, sleek and fast, with cloaking technology that allowed them to slip past the planet's defenses unnoticed. Their mission was simple: disable the colony's orbital defense platforms without causing unnecessary destruction. The fighters were armed with advanced EMP, devices designed to knock out the planet's shield generators and communication systems. We'll hit them fast and hard. Keep your eyes on the sky, Alina said, her words like a promise. As the human fighters streaked toward Elisar, the Varani on the ground had no idea what was coming. The planet's defense systems were outdated, and the Varani had never expected a human attack. It was too quick, too precise. Within minutes, the first defense platform went silent, its power systems drained by the EMP blasts. The rest of the platforms followed suit, falling one by one, till Elisar's orbital defenses were completely neutralized. On the ground, the Varani military stationed there were in a state of confusion. The colony's leaders had never expected any kind of retaliation from the humans. They believed they had crushed them, that humanity would never rise again. But as the power went out across the colony, panic began to spread inside the Varani. Command Center, General Koresh, sat at his desk, staring at the flickering display in front of him. His face was a mask of disbelief as he watched his defense systems fail. He had heard rumors of human survivors, but he had dismissed them as nothing more than tales. Yes. He was wrong. Sir, the defense systems are offline, one of his officers said, his voice trembling with panic. We have no contact with the outer colonies. Our ships are vulnerable. Koresh slammed his fist on the table. Find out what's happening now. But it was too late. By the time Koresh gave the order, the first human strike team had already landed on Elisar's surface. They descended silently from their ships, moving like shadows across the darkened landscape. Their goal was not to kill, but to take control. They had no interest in destroying the colony, at least, not yet. They only wanted to make the Varani understand the power of the humans they had betrayed. Elena's voice echoed through the comms. First wave, report in. We're on the ground. No resistance so far, came the reply from Sergeant Miller, the leader of the ground troops. Good. Proceed as planned, Alina said. We move quickly. We're not here to make a scene. We're here to show them who's in charge. The human soldiers moved with military precision, sweeping through the colony streets and taking control of key infrastructure points. They bypassed most of the civilian areas, keeping their presence discreet. Their goal was to show that they could operate within Virani territory without detection. By the time the Virani could mobilize any forces, the humans would be long gone. The message would be clear. Humanity is no longer weak. Humanity is in control. Back aboard the Vanguard, Alina watched the live feeds from the ground. The soldiers moved with swift efficiency, taking over the main power stations, communications hubs, and military bases without causing unnecessary destruction. They didn't want to destroy the planet or its people. They wanted to send a message of strength, of power, and of humanity's return. But as the mission unfolded, Alina could sense something in the air. The Virani were not going to take this lying down. The humans had already made their move, but the war was far from over. The Virani would come for them. They would retaliate, and that, Alina knew, was when the real fight would begin. A few hours later, with the colony firmly under human control, Alina gave the order to leave. The fleet would not linger. It made their point, and now they had to move on. The first strike had been successful, but it was only the beginning as the fleet moved back into hyperspace. Alina stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring at the stars ahead. The mission had been a success, but the real challenge was still to come. The Virani would retaliate, of that she was certain, but humanity would be ready, and this time they wouldn't just survive. It would make the galaxy remember who they were. The human fleet moved silently through the stars, their ships cloaked and invisible to the radar of the galaxy's watchful eyes. The first strike had been a success, but the humans knew the galaxy would soon take notice. The Virani had lost a Lysar, and they were not going to let it slide. In the dark corners of space, rumors began to spread. The galaxy began to wonder, is humanity truly back? Back on Earth, the news of their first victory echoed across the planet. The people who had once been broken by betrayal now stood proud. Their heads held high. They had taken the first step, and they would not stop until they had reclaimed everything that had been lost. But the peace they had hoped for was short-lived. The Virani had called for help, and the galaxy's leaders, who had watched quietly from the sidelines, were beginning to react. "Captain, we've detected a fleet coming from the Virani capital," Lieutenant Zane reported, as he studied the glowing screens in front of him. "It's massive. They've rallied their strongest forces." Alina stood by his side, her expression unreadable. She had expected this. The Virani were not a species that would simply accept defeat. They would retaliate, but it wouldn't be just the Virani. The galaxy would be watching, and other species, those who feared humanity's rise, would surely take sides. Alina had no illusions about the challenge ahead. But humanity had to prove that their first victory was no fluke. "We've struck once," Alina said quietly, her voice steady. "Now we wait. The Virani won't take this lying down. They'll send everything they have." The fleet continued its journey deeper into the galaxy, hidden in the dark reaches of space. The humans had planned their next move carefully. They would not make the same mistake again, rushing into battle without knowing the full picture. The human fleet was small, but it was smarter. It was built on strategy, not strength. Meanwhile, the Virani fleet, led by General Koresh, was preparing for war. He paced in his command center, his frustration growing with every passing moment. Elisar was only the beginning. Humanity had struck, and it had hurt. But this time, Koresh would make sure they paid. "Prepare the fleet for immediate launch." General Koresh ordered, his voice a mix of anger and determination. "We will show them that they cannot defy the Virani." The Virani had more ships, more firepower, and a network of allies ready to assist them. But as they made their way toward the last known location of the human fleet, they had no idea what they were about to face. Humanity, having learned from its past mistakes, had already begun to prepare. Captain Drake knew that the Virani would be looking for a head-on confrontation, expecting a simple battle. But humans were never about fighting on the enemy's terms. Instead, they would turn the tables. "They think we're weak," Alina said to her officers, her gaze focused on the fleet's holographic map. "They think this is just another war. they're wrong. We have the element of surprise on our side. The human fleet had spread out, with each ship moving in different directions, leaving no clear target. If the Varani expected them to come in a straight line, they were in for a rude awakening. Lena wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Instead, the humans would strike from unexpected angles, using stealth and precision. But as the Varani fleet approached, a new player entered the scene. The galaxy's neutral factions, some of whom had secretly admired the humans' resilience, were beginning to take notice. The first to reach out was the Archon Coalition, a group of smaller species that had once suffered under the Varanese rule. Humanity's rise will not go unnoticed, said Ambassador Thal, the Archon representative. We have seen the destruction the Varani cause, and we will help you if you need it. But be warned, the Varani will retaliate with everything they have. Elena's face was hard as stone as she heard the warning. We don't need their help. Not yet. But when the time comes, we will take it. The human fleet was now hidden in a nebula near the edge of Varani space. The nebula's dense gases made it nearly impossible for enemy ships to see anything inside. It was the perfect place to set a trap. As the Varani approached, the human ships were scattered throughout the thick clouds, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Remember, the Varani may be larger, but they are not invincible, Elena said. They have made the mistake of underestimating us before. We will use their own arrogance against them. The first shots were fired with surgical precision. Human ships, cloaked and nearly invisible, launched waves of missiles toward the Varani fleet's flagship, a massive warship known as the Althor. The missiles struck their target, disabling its shields and causing a massive explosion in its upper decks. The Varani were blindsided, and before they could retaliate, the human fleet had already moved in. The Varani scrambled to regroup, but the humans were too fast, too skilled. They had learned to fight in the shadows, and it showed. The Varani ships, though larger and more numerous, were slow to react. As the humans launched another round of precision strikes, the Varani found themselves overwhelmed. They couldn't keep up with the speed of the human fleet. Alina stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the chaos unfold. The Varani had underestimated them again. But this was only the beginning. We've made our point, Alina said. Her voice calm despite the intensity of the battle. Let's make sure they remember it. The Vanguard launched its final attack on the Varani flagship, targeting its engines. With a well-placed shot, the Althor erupted into flames, its massive forms slowly drifting out of control. The remaining Varani ships, now leaderless, scattered in every direction. Their morale shattered. As the human fleet regrouped, Elena's eyes turned toward the starry horizon. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Varani would return. The galaxy would be watching. Humanity would be ready. Asterisk. The victory over the Varani had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. News spread quickly, and the galaxy's leaders were no longer so sure of their power. Humanity had struck once, and now the galaxy was watching to see if the humans could truly challenge the might of the Varani Empire. Captain Elena Drake, though, wasn't concerned with what the galaxy thought. She had one goal, to take back what was taken from her people. And she was going to do it, planet by planet. Humanity's first victory had been a success. But Elena knew the next phase of their mission would be more difficult. The Varani were licking their wounds, gathering their forces, and planning their next attack. But Elena had already expected this. She knew that this war would not be won by force alone. Humanity needed allies. After the battle at Elisar, the humans had made contact with the Archon Coalition, a collection of smaller alien species who had once suffered under the Varanese oppressive rule. The Archons, like the humans, had been betrayed by the Varani, and they knew the cost of standing against them. Now, they were eager to help humanity take down their former oppressors. I'm glad you could join us, Elena said, her voice steady as she addressed Ambassador Thal, the Archon representative. He was an elderly alien, his skin a pale blue that shimmered in the dim light of the Vanguard's briefing room. Your victory was impressive, Captain Thau replied, his voice thick with respect. But we are all too aware of what the Varani are capable of. They will not go quietly into the dark. Alina nodded. We know. That's why we need to act fast. Our next target is a Varani stronghold on the planet Furska. It's heavily fortified, but if we strike quickly, we can cripple their ability to launch any large-scale counterattacks. I agree, Thal said, his gaze sharp. The Archon Coalition has a fleet of its own, small though it may be. We will send it with you. Together, we can make sure the Varani never regain their strength. Alina considered this. Humanity was still small in number, their fleet not as large as their enemies. But with the Archon Coalition's support, they would have a better chance of succeeding. We'll need your fleet to hit them from the flank. Can't give them time to regroup. Thal nodded again, his sharp eyes glinting with determination. We will be ready. With the Archons on their side, the human fleet set course for Furska, a planet deep within the heart of Varana-controlled space. As they neared the planet, Alina could feel the weight of the decision. This wasn't just another raid. If they failed here, the Varani would come for them with everything they had. Get ready, Alina said, addressing her crew. This is it. This is where we show the galaxy that humanity isn't just here to survive, we're here to win. The Vanguard and the Archon fleet slipped into orbit around Furska, their ships moving quickly and quietly. The Varani had no idea they were coming. But this time, the humans weren't just attacking a small colony. This was a Varani stronghold. The stakes were higher, and the risk was greater. If the humans succeeded, it would be a major blow to the Varani's control of the region. Elena's eyes scanned the data as it flashed across the screen in front of her. All systems are green. The plan is set. We strike fast. We strike hard. Understood. Captain Lieutenant Zane said from the tactical station, We're ready. The first wave of fighters was launched, sleek and fast, their cloaking devices keeping them hidden from the Varanus scanners. They sped toward the planet's surface, targeting key military installations and defense systems. Within minutes, the Varanese defenses began to crumble. The fighters hit their targets with deadly precision, knocking out communications and shielding systems. But even as the first wave made its strike, Alina knew they couldn't afford to stop. This was just the beginning. The Varani would fight back. They had to finish this before reinforcements could arrive. Captain, we have enemy ships entering the system, Zane called out. Elena's eyes narrowed as she studied the incoming fleet. The Varani were quick to respond, sending ships in all directions. But they weren't prepared for the speed and precision of the human fleet. As the Varani ships closed in, the human fleet opened fire, their advanced weapons tearing through enemy shields with ease. The Varani ships were big, but they were slow and clumsy compared to the nimble human vessels. Keep the pressure on. Them, Alina ordered. Don't let them regroup. Hit their engines. We need to disable them, not destroy them. The human ships maneuvered with deadly grace, picking off Varani ships one by one. The Archon fleet provided backup, attacking from the opposite side and drawing fire away from the humans. Together, the two fleets struck with the force of a storm, their combined firepower overwhelming the Varani at every turn. It wasn't long before the Varani began to retreat. Their fleet was in disarray, their command structure broken. But as Alina watched the battle unfold, she knew they couldn't let up. They had to press on, even as the Varani tried to regroup. The final blow came when the Vanguard locked onto the Varani's main command ship, the Vornith, a massive warship that had been coordinating the Varani forces. Alina gave the order, and with one powerful blast, the Vornith's engines were disabled. The Varani flagship, now dead in the water, drifted helplessly in space. As the Varani forces scattered and fled, Alina allowed herself a moment of relief. They had done it. They had crippled the Varani's hold on Furska. And with their victory, humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a weak species. They were a force to be reckoned with. But as the battle ended and the human fleet began to regroup, Alina knew this was just the beginning. The Varani wouldn't stop fighting. They would gather more forces, more ships, and they would come again. But this time, humanity wouldn't be caught off guard. The fight was far from over. Alina would be ready. The war was no longer a distant possibility. It had become a reality that shook the foundations of the galaxy. Humanity, once thought to be defeated, was now a force to be reckoned with. The Varani, once a proud empire, had been pushed back by the very species they had betrayed. But as the final battle near the Varani capital drew near, Alina Drake knew that the hardest part of the war was yet to come. The Vanguard and the rest of the human fleet were now gathered at the edge of Varane-controlled space, preparing for the most dangerous mission humanity had ever undertaken. The Varani, after their humiliating losses, were pulling all their remaining forces together. This time, they would not be so easily defeated. General Koresh, the Varani's top military strategist, was determined to reclaim the strength he had lost. The human fleet, now bolstered by their Arcan allies, was about to face the full might of the Varani Empire. "We've hit them hard," Lena said as she stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the void of space. "They won't go down without a fight. We'll need to be smarter than ever." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of determination to it. Lena knew that the upcoming battle would be their toughest yet. The Varani would throw everything they had at humanity, and they couldn't afford any mistakes. The fleet was ready, but there was no illusion of easy victory. Varani had learned from their earlier mistakes. Varani had fight smarter now. The human fleet, while powerful, was still small in comparison to the massive forces the Varani could bring to bear. But humanity had something the Varani did not: the element of surprise. They had already proven they could strike fast, hard, and without warning. It was a tactic the Varani had never fully understood. "Captain, we've received word from the Archon fleet," Lieutenant Zane reported. "They're ready for the final assault. They want to know our next move." Alina turned to face her officer. "Tell them we're moving in. This ends today." The plan was set. The human fleet would attack the Varani capital world Varano, a heavily defended planet that stood as the heart of the Empire. It was the last stronghold the Varani had left. If humanity could cripple it, they would be able to bring the war to a close. The galaxy would be forced to recognize humanity's power and its rightful place in it. As the fleet made its way toward Varanor, the tension was palpable. The silence in the command room was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines, and the occasional burst of communication from the other fleet members. They were ready, but even the most battle-hardened of them knew that this could be their final push, or their final fall. "We'll approach from the far side of the planet," Elena said, her voice steady. "We'll take out their defenses before they even know we're here." "Understood, Captain," Zane replied. "We'll be in position within the hour." The time was approaching. The final battle loomed large on the horizon. As the human fleet moved into position around Varanar, Elena received an unexpected transmission. It was a message from the Varani. The voice that spoke through the comms was unmistakable. "General Koresh." "Captain Alina Drake." Koresh's voice came through, cold and calculating. "You have come far, but your victory will be short-lived. You are a small, insignificant species. The Varani will crush you, just as we have crushed others. Your rebellion ends today." Elena's lips curled into a faint smile. She knew the words were meant to provoke, but she wasn't going to fall for it. Instead, she took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "General Koresh, your empire has fallen. Your time is up. This is where it ends." She cut the transmission before he could respond. She had said all she needed to say. Now the only thing that mattered was action. The fleet closed in on Varanor, the planet looming larger in their viewports. The Varana's defenses were formidable, but the humans had learned the weaknesses in their systems. With every move, they adapted and improved. The Archon fleet, working in tandem with the humans, began its assault from the opposite side of the planet. Drawing the Varanese attention away from the main attack force, Alina stood at the helm, watching as the battle unfolded. The first salvo of missiles struck the Varanese planetary shields, causing them to flicker and fail. As soon as the shields dropped, the human ships unleashed their main weapons. Tearing into the enemy's defense platforms, the battle was fierce. Varani ships, large and imposing, fired back with everything they had. But the human fleet was smaller, faster, and more agile. Each ship had been designed with one goal in mind: to strike fast and precisely, to avoid the Varani's massive firepower and retaliate with deadly accuracy. The Vanguard led the charge, its cannons blasting away at the Varani's military bases on the surface. Ground troops were deployed, moving quickly and silently to disable key installations. Every moment was a race against time. The Varani desperately tried to regroup and counterattack. Hours passed as the battle raged on, but the humans had the advantage. The Varani were losing their grip on their own world. Their ships were being picked off one by one, and their ground forces were scattered and disorganized. The human fleet had struck hard and fast, just as Alina had planned. But as the battle drew to a close, Alina knew the war wasn't over. This was only the beginning of the end. The Varani would retreat, regroup, and come back stronger. But humanity had shown them that they were no longer the underdog. They were a force that could not be ignored as the final Varani ship fell. From the sky, Alina stood on the bridge, looking out at the debris drifting in space. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. She had taken the first step toward reclaiming what was lost. The galaxy would now know that humanity was here to stay. "We've done it," Lieutenant Zane said, his voice filled with relief. Alina nodded, but there was no time for celebration. The message was clear, and the galaxy was watching. Humanity had proven itself, and now they would prepare for the next phase. The Varani would be back, but humanity would be ready. The reckoning had come. The galaxy would never forget the name of humanity. Asterisk.